Hey there, welcome to the Marriage Unmasked podcast. Today we are talking about what if you have doubts about your spouse?
I bet that never happens.
It has happened many times for us. You can get in your head what you hear a lot in the world, which is like, are they really the one, right? Or you just start to think like maybe the grass is greener, like maybe somebody else is going to be more of what I think I need, right?
Especially when you're going through a lot of struggle. When you're really struggling in the relationship and you're really struggling to communicate and things are not going well, it's very easy to think, maybe I wouldn't have this struggle if I was married to somebody else.
Yeah, or when your expectations aren't being met, right? You come into marriage with certain expectations and then they don't get met. And then you're starting to wonder, right? You start to doubt. And, the whole concept of like the one or, you know, the right one, somebody who's a perfect fit or, fulfills you.
It's a great Hollywood. It's a great Hollywood plot. I mean, it is something our culture really communicates to us a lot, is that there's this one person out there that's going to have everything you need.
Yeah, but it's not really biblical and it's really not helpful for like a long-term committed forever kind of marriage, right? Because that thought is going to create so much doubt, right? I mean, one person out of all the billions of people, how could you have gotten it right? And so it's just not a helpful, it's not a helpful concept. And before you think like, oh, well, I don't really need this episode because I don't believe that there is only one person, just hold on because I think this comes out in a lot of other ways too. Like, for instance, who you think you're marrying, that isn't often the person that you end up with. There's so much more that you don't know about that person. And that alone might kind of send you into a tizzy where you are questioning things and you're doubting because you're like, this is not the person I married. I've heard that before.
Yeah, and I think that happens even when you date for a while and you get to know each other for quite a while and you really think that you're on the same page and you know this person really well. Like when you're actually married and you're actually living with somebody, it brings out a depth of knowing them that you just didn't have before you were married, and it can bring up so many different things that you just weren't expecting about that person.
Well, and marriage is such a journey, right? So even if, you do know your spouse perfectly, you know that depth. It's a journey and they're going to change and you're going to change.
And your situations in life is going to change. So like you're going to be in different seasons and settings and different pressures and stresses in life, and different sides of you and different sides of your spouse are also going to come out just based on the circumstances that you find yourself in.
So you find out so much more after you're married. And, that actually can be a very beautiful thing, but it can also be really challenging, especially when you're not expecting it. You might find out things that were hidden. You might find out just that your spouse is on a different trajectory than you thought they were going to be on, or they get stuck in something, right? They maybe get stuck in an addiction or in a really big challenging thing. Maybe it's a mental health struggle. It could be so many different things. And the real issue is learning how to love and care for the person that you find yourself married to, because you can try to go the other route of like, well, maybe I want to, maybe there's someone better, or maybe I'm going to try to make them into who I want them to be, right? But it's really, you find so much more fulfillment when you just decide that you want to learn to love and care for them the way they are. And, I think we see this in at least for me, my imagination is going to like David and Bathsheba in the Bible.
Yeah.
Because imagine that marriage.
There must have been so much there the Bible doesn't tell us all those like kind of behind the scene details, but you can imagine that that situation was just full of a lot of opportunities for doubt in the relationship. And you think about, how they got together in the first place, in a situation of sin where he's going after her and she's already married. He ends up
killing her husband,
basically having her husband killed at his command, and then they have this child together, and then the child dies because of the, as a consequence for what David had done. And so all of these things are just like, talk about a roller coaster when you're first together.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on, and it didn't stop there. It kept going. There was, David, was handling situations poorly after that. Like he had
like
the whole
family matters.
His family was kind of just, in a way, he kind of abdicated some of his responsibilities as the head of the house, and so then Amnon, one of his sons, rapes his sister. David doesn't deal with it, and then we have we just have all kinds of things that just start to go unravel in that whole relationship, and all these different children.
His son
Absalom then rebelled against David because of all of that. So just all kinds of crazy stuff.
And then I was thinking too, like when David is on the run, and his, Bathsheba, his wife, is probably like, what in the world did I marry into? Like this is just the most out of control. Like if you were on the run and I had to be on the run for my life with you, I would be like, who did I marry?
Yeah, I thought I was marrying the king.
Yeah.
The king of Israel here. I thought I was marrying the king, and now everything has been just a mess ever since I married him. And talk about some serious doubts.
Yeah. And so, we hope, I guess we don't know the state of their marriage, but we hope that, and it seems like there was still like deep love there, or I am a hopeless romantic, so I'm like,
there was commitment there.
Yeah.
They did stay together.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that's the biggest key, right? And the Bible says that David is a man after God's own heart. And so, I like to think that he was loving to his wife, and he did pursue her and healing in their relationship. But anyways, it just kind of shows like there's all kinds of situations where this happens, and you can still stay committed, right? You still, you don't just get necessarily like, I'm out. Okay, he's crazy. I'm out, right? So in this, on a different side of this, like we want to be committed, right? No matter what happens. Obviously there are reasons why you would pursue a divorce.
Yeah.
Well, abuse and things like that.
Definitely, or
leaving the marriage.
Whenever the marriage covenant is broken by one party, so in cases of somebody cheating on the spouse, there may be forgiveness too, but that person really did break the marriage covenant, and there is, there may be forgiveness, but there might not be full reconciliation there, and the marriage may be broken because it was broken by that act. Right. And so you still do want to be choosy, right? When you are thinking about getting married. It's not necessarily just willy-nilly like, well, I'll make it work with anybody. It doesn't mean you don't have standards or qualities that you're looking for necessarily in a spouse. You definitely do want to. Yeah. I hear a lot of women talking about how they're unequally yoked. I think this is like a term that sometimes women like to throw around when they are not pleased with their husbands. Well, I'm unequally yoked. Like maybe he's not acting, very masculine. Maybe he's like a really passive dude, and or maybe he's really struggling with something, porn or whatever. And so it's like, well, I'm unequally yoked. Maybe he's not growing as much as they are. But and there is definitely, I think the Bible talks about unequally yoked. A lot of times it has to do with somebody being in unbelief. And that could be the case too. Or like, what if your husband loses his faith, or is in great struggle with his faith? So he becomes an unbeliever. Yeah. There can be very difficult things to work through, but
right. So you want to know coming into marriage, like what are your deal breakers? And I think be very particular about who you decide to align your life with forever, right? This is a big decision. Most of you listening are probably already married, so like you've already made this decision. Yes. But you do want to be choosy, but really when you say yes to somebody, you are saying yes, to them for life. And so it's not a like, yes, but hopefully you're going to change. Yes, but
Right.
hopefully you'll be who I want you to be even through the rest of our life. Yes, but you know what I mean? So
Yeah, you have to go in with your eyes wide open, understanding, what you're really looking for in a spouse, and then it's almost like you go in with your eyes wide open, and then afterwards, then you're like, okay, this is it. Now my eyes are only for them. My eyes are only for them, and I've made this choice, and I'm committed to this choice, and I'm going to find ways to make this work now in the choice that I've made. It's just
coming to problem solving, like putting your brain into solving instead of leaving, instead of quitting.
Yeah.
And I know that there's that's a easy thing to say, way harder to do. And sometimes, I mean, like for us, for example, for us,
Yeah.
like we didn't even really know fully what we needed or wanted until we were married. I mean, we knew some things. Like I think our deal breakers, maybe most of our deal breakers we had, right? Like we wanted somebody who loved the Lord, and we wanted somebody who loved family and wanted to have a family, and different things like that. But there were some things that were glaringly obvious to me that Adam did not have once I realized these things like later on. And we got married a bit younger, but we'd been dating for what, like 3 years?
Well, maybe 2. Yep. I think 2 years we dated, and then.
Okay, I thought it was 3.
Well, and then I guess this is
We
going
don't
back
even
into
know.
ancient history.
We don't even know. Anyways,
maybe dated 2 years, but then we were engaged for a year. So
yeah, so
technically, I
3.
suppose the 3 would be the engagement year.
Adam was
Well,
missing an entire.
I would say dating is before
Well,
engagement. Engagement is a little bit
okay.
step
That's a
up.
whole nother. That's a whole nother debate.
That's where I'm at.
Anyways, so I realized I really wanted a man who had vision, who was driven, who was really passionate and interested in personal growth. And at that time, that was not the way Adam was showing up. And so it was really hard for me, especially as I grew in my faith, and I did not, like, we were on different planes there. And it was just really hard to do that. I mean, I was also looking for a man who was very masculine and very strong, and I didn't realize that before we got married. Sure. Because I think I was so focused on the wounded Cara was like wanting someone who was safe and somebody who was kind. That was like my brain that was in, unhealed, was like, that was its like number one, like someone safe, right? But what I really wanted was somebody who was masculine and strong, not somebody who was just going to let me walk all over them.
Yeah.
And so those were kind of some hard things to work through. What about for you?
Sure. And for me, in some ways, the opposite. Like, I liked being challenged by her. There was an aspect to the challenge that I liked, but I was really looking for someone who was very feminine, who was very patient and soft and kind, and she's definitely those things at times. But, and I think I came in looking for a little bit more, maybe adventure. Like I was in a place where I was kind of, you know. Looking for something different, looking for something interesting, something more. And she definitely is that. She's different. She's interesting.
So you're
she's
saying
more.
the reason why you
The
wanted
reason
to marry
I
me
was
is
wanting
because
to
you
marry
wanted
her,
something different than what you.
than what I was used to, and than what I was like, kind of like maybe expecting. And there was a challenge of like, here's a woman who's really hurting, and I can really be kind and loving, and I can really take care of her too. So like I saw that as a good thing. But obviously I'm looking for someone who's very feminine. She's looking for someone who's very masculine. We were
Well, the thing is,
different.
no, I don't think we were both
looking
for
for
that.
right, but we needed those things.
Well, what happened really, I think, was it became glaringly obvious that we were both living in, like, we knew something was off.
Yeah.
We knew the masculine feminine dynamic was off, but we didn't have the words, we didn't have the knowledge,
or
we
the
didn't
tools to figure it
we
out,
didn't
or
know
the way
what
to
in the
communicate
world
about it.
was going on, but we just knew something was off.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, I need somebody who's strong. I need someone who's masculine. And he's like, I need someone who's feminine and soft. And we were like, we're not being that for each other. And so that was something that we really had to work through.
Yeah.
And I think that's an issue that a lot of couples struggle with, which is why we have our whole, module in our Healing Your Marriage course on masculine, feminine dynamics, because this is a big issue. And we do, like, women, as women, we crave a man to be strong and masculine so we can relax into him. And men, they just crave their woman to be soft and supportive and you know feminine. And so when we don't get that, we kind of act up, really. And it just kind of feeds into this unhealthy cycle. So, doubts can happen because when we were seeing that in each other, it's just like, who did I marry?
Yeah. Especially when we're not understanding why. We're not understanding what this dynamic is. So now it's like, instead of like looking at, hey, this is a dynamic we could both be working on, we were looking at, this is a problem with my spouse.
Yeah.
There's something in them that's not working for me. Mm-hmm. And when you have that kind of perspective, those doubts are going to be really powerful, and it can really affect the relationship really negatively. Instead of like, okay, well, there's a dynamic here that we can work on, and we can develop some of these gifts and show up differently in our relationship, and then those doubts can be minimized quite a bit by doing that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so when the doubts happen, which I think probably every marriage they happen, go back to what marriage really is, right? Remind yourself of the commitment that you made, and while your pain and your doubt, it does matter. Don't sit in it and dwell in it. Process through it, right? Offer it to God. Ask him to bring you healing. Ask him to bring you encouragement and wisdom. And ask him for what you need, because your spouse can't ever fill all your needs, right? If you're like, you know what, I really needed somebody who was more stable. I needed somebody who was, whatever. And you can definitely express that to your spouse in a very kind and non-accusatory way. But also remember, you can go to God to get that need met first and foremost. And he is going to perfectly fulfill your needs, and he will also provide you with wisdom. And so go to him and let him be what you need first and foremost. Otherwise you're going to probably have a lot of doubts. You're going to constantly have doubts if you're expecting your spouse to,
Right. And I think that's also key, is to kind of temper your expectations a little bit. Not your, like you're still expressing what you need, expressing what you desire, what your expectations are, but you also can, sometimes if we're expecting so much from our spouse, and that's our focus is on what we're expecting from them instead of what we're working on in ourselves, then that focus is going to fuel those doubts instead of, you can resolve some of those doubts if you're tempering back your expectations, really focus on what I can do, what can I change, how can I sort of resolve the situation so that this doubt doesn't keep coming up, how can I do that myself.
Yeah, I love that passage from Galatians 6:9, that it says, and let us not become weary in doing good. For in due season we will reap, if we do not give up. I love that, because that's so encouraging.
Yeah.
I know sometimes you get weary, you get tired in marriage, and you just feel like giving up. You just wonder, like, why is this so hard? Or sometimes the challenge of it can make you doubt, right? Like, you're like, this shouldn't be this hard. Yeah. Why is marriage so hard? It must be because I'm in the wrong marriage. But that's not necessarily true.
Not the right conclusion.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, marriage is hard. And I think it's hard for everybody, especially if you're digging deep, especially if you're growing in connection and you're not just settling for like a partnership instead of a deep, connected, beautiful relationship. It is hard. But that's just like Galatians encourages, don't give up, and I think sometimes we have past hurts from our relationship, right? And sometimes that fuels the doubt. He's untrustworthy, he broke my trust, or she
blaming
Yep,
and
she's
accusatory.
yeah.
She says things in a very mean and hurtful way. You know, like that could be a hurt that I would have.
And so instead of staying stuck in those hurts, I think there's so much power in forgiveness.
Yeah.
It takes, again, that takes energy to forgive. That's not easy. That's a whole process. We have a whole module in our course just on forgiveness because we teach a 5-step process because it is just so much more than just, okay, I forgive you. Everything's okay now. No, it's so much more than that. But there's so much power to it. In Ephesians 4:32, it says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another." Just as Christ forgave you. And I think those words are so beautiful. Try to um, come back to being tender-hearted and kind to each other, and that forgiveness. And that happens not because you force yourself and you're like, okay, or shame yourself like you're not being kind, you're not forgiving, you're not. It comes because you're going to God and you're unburdening yourself and asking Him to love you and to heal you and to give you what you need. And then you're able to come back to your spouse with more of a tender heart, able to walk through that forgiveness process.
Yeah, and you're getting that just like the passage says, you're getting that forgiveness from Christ. Like Christ has forgiven you. And that is really the thing that fuels us to forgive. As we just lay our burdens before Him, as we are like, I know I'm not always showing up. I'm not healthy in this marriage. Sometimes I'm acting out of a place of selfishness or whatever, and we lay that before Him, and we get forgiveness from Him for everything. That also helps us. That fuels our forgiveness for our spouse too. Just to know that I'm free, I'm forgiven, I'm I'm loved by God, and now I can offer that same kind of forgiveness and love to my spouse.
So we hope this episode was encouraging. If you are feeling weary in your marriage, we hope it encouraged your heart. We also hope that it let you know you're not alone, right? Questioning if doubting your spouse, doubting, if you're in the, quote unquote, right marriage, that is normal. And don't become weary. That's our encouragement. Don't become weary. Keep going. There's so much more depth and goodness available. God wants you to have so much joy and passion in your marriage. And if you need help, please reach out. Our Healing Your Marriage course is available. Coaching is available to you. And we would love to walk with you through your marriage.